Okay, Lab 10, deploying linked clone desktops. So we're going to create a base snapshot for the virtual machine for our gold image. We're going to enable the composer, and then we'll create a pool of linked clone desktops. It's kind of out of order. Personally, I would actually configure the view composer first. I suppose it doesn't really matter. So I'll just follow the lab documentation the way it is as to not cause confusion. So task one, we're going to take a baseline snapshot from the virtual machine. We're going to log into our student machine, which is right there. And we'll log in as trainee. And we'll launch our vSphere client. We'll log in as administrator. And then we're going to grab our VMV underscore Win7 machine. We'll open the console on that guy. And here's what I was talking about during lecture. Some of these machines, when they're copied, when they're cloned, they end up in a, I wouldn't really call it corrupt because it's not, but it's detected as being corrupted, and so it goes into system restore. We're going to go ahead and click on cancel. It's probably going to still not work. Yeah, can't be ended. Okay, it's in the middle of a repair operation. That's great. What we're going to do is we're going to escape out of here, and we're going to hit this guy right here, the restart guest, and say yes. And so we're going to restart this thing. When it comes up back to this menu, we'll just make sure that we choose Start Windows normally, and everything will be fine. Okay, and we'll log into this guy as, I think, administrator. Let's see. Oh, we're going to use trainee. Okay, that's fine. And then what we're going to do is we're going to domain join this guy. So I'm going to click on the menu here, go to computer, right click, go to properties, change settings, click on domain, and we're going to type in train.local. It'll prompt us for credentials, and we'll put in the administrator credentials. And it'll say, welcome to train. Close this off. And then in the, oh, this one doesn't do it, never mind, okay. That's fine. We will go ahead and let it reboot. So we'll close this. Restart now, yeah, sure. Let's let it restart. Okay, and then we'll go ahead and send a control delete. And this time we're actually going to log in as administrator. So we're going to switch user. We don't want to log in as a local administrator. We want to log in as the administrator of the train domain. So we can do it a couple ways. We can do train / or as the documentation says, we can do administrator. If you spell it right, administrator at train.local. You could have done train / administrator as well. Suppose it depends on what you're used to. And we'll log in there. And as soon as this loads up, we will install the View Agent. And of course, we're not going to install View Agent 5.1. Like the lab says, we're going to install 6.2.2. So click here, we'll run out to vmv-ad, vmv-ad, shares, and we'll go to VMware, and we're going to install the agent, 622 agent. For some reason, it seems when it actually launches the installer, it hides it behind the window you had open. So you can go down here and just click on that guy. Click on next, we'll accept the agreement, click next, IPv4, very similar to how, and so here we're going to enable remote desktop, we'll let that automatically happen, and then we'll let the installer run. Alright, and then when it finishes up, we'll go ahead and let it reboot. All right, we'll send the control delete here. Log back in as administrator again. Or not. And then what it's going to ask you to do is launch services and disable the firewall. So this is, where are we? We were on task. It's task 1 still? It's task 1. So task 1, and we are on step 9. I would skip this because I don't think it's going to hurt it, but things have evolved since. We don't really have to do this anymore. So I would skip 9, 10, 11, 12. Yeah, 9, 10, 11, and 12 as far as the steps. Not labs, the steps. So in task 1 on lab 10, we're going to skip steps. Task 1, steps 9, 10, 11, and 12. So we'll jump straight to 13. And in 13, it tells you to go to ipconfig/release. I personally like to make sure I can see what it's doing. So I like to actually watch the release. So I go to CMD, type in CMD to get the command prompt. So I get the command prompt here, and I'm going to type in ipconfig/release. I want to make sure that I see that it actually returns a positive result. We can close that out right there. And then on step 14, I'm not exactly sure what they're talking about here as far as clicking the separate window icon. I don't see that. I'm not exactly sure what state they're in or what's going on there. So if you see that, fine, go ahead and click it, but I don't know. I'm skipping 14 because I don't exactly know what they're talking about there. It doesn't make sense to me. Because all we have to do now is just close down this virtual machine. So you can go up here to the VM, and you can go to power, and you can go shut down guest. Likewise, you could just go here and do shutdown here as well. Same difference. And we can close this guy out right here and move on to taking a snapshot. So here's our VM v7. It's been powered down. We can see right here because we don't have that green arrow there. We're going to go to snapshot by right-clicking on VMV. Then we go to snapshot here, take snapshot. We'll go ahead and just go with baseline, just to keep with the lab documentation here, and click OK. And then it tells you to go back in and make sure that it actually works. They're just really trying to show you what it really looks like. You don't have to do this in real life. They're just saying go in here and look and see, okay, that's what it looks like, right? In real life, you don't have to go in there and double check it. All right, that is task 1. We can move on to task 2 now. Creating, oh, sorry. Yeah, we'll move on to task 2, which to me should be the first step, and that's actually configuring the composer. All right, so in the student desktop, we're going to, I think it says use Firefox, but we're on lab 10, and you've probably realized by now that we're not using Firefox. The lab is actually set up to use Internet Explorer. Firefox Java is not installed on Java. Flash is not installed for Firefox, but it is installed for Internet Explorer. But you've obviously figured that out already if you're this far. Okay, we'll accept the warning. Log in as administrator. And when it loads, we're going to go down into View Configuration, and we'll click on Servers. And we're going to choose our vCenter server here, and we're going to edit. And what we want to edit now is the View Composer settings. Even though we're in the vCenter server settings, we're not changing the vCenter server, that's already set. We're going to go down here and change the View Composer settings. Now, if this were a standalone, if we had a standalone View Composer server, like I've said before, typical deployments, typical production deployments will have a dedicated View Composer, standalone View Composer, meaning that it's not co-installed with the vCenter server. It's its own server altogether by itself. You would choose this option, obviously, and put all the information in. But since this one is co-installed, the Composer is co-installed with the vCenter server, then we're going to choose that option. Again, this is the Composer we're talking about. Again, the connection server cannot be co-installed. We're in the connection server here, but we're setting up the configuration settings for the Composer. Recall in Lab 9, we actually installed the Composer on the vCenter server, but we didn't do the configuration for it. So that's what we're doing here. Go ahead and click on Verify Server Information. Click on View Certificate, click Accept, and then the next thing is we're going to add the domain. And our domain is train.local. We'll use our administrator. Now in real life, you're not going to be using the domain administrator account, which is basically it is what we're doing here. You're going to have somebody set up an account specifically for this, typically a service account that has all the proper permissions. It's a very specific set of permissions too that this account has to have. We haven't really covered all that information, but it's explicitly laid out in the VMware documentation for installing View. You can use the domain admin if you want, but that's kind of a liability or risk that you're setting yourself up there for. So we'll click OK here, and after that we are done with task 2. All right, we're all set. Again, to me the logical flow here is kind of off. I would have done that configuration before we even started working with that Windows 7 machine, but nonetheless, it is what it is. That's how the lab's set up. Okay, so normally that would have already been done. We would go into our Windows 7 machine, we'd create the snapshot, we'd install the View agent, create this, release the IP address, create the snapshot like we did in the first part with task 1. And then we'll go on to task 3 where we're actually going to create the automated pool. So we're going to go into Catalog and click on Pools. And we'll click on Add. I'm going to create an automated pool here, dedicated with automatic assignment. And because we're going to link clones now, we're going to choose this radio button and make sure that our vCenter server has been selected. Looking at the lab documentation, our ID is going to be pool-marketing, and our display name is going to be marketing Win7. Our access group is marketing desktops, and in the description, again, it doesn't really matter. Go ahead and type in what it says there if you'd like. If not, it's really not going to matter. Under settings, Looks like the only thing we're changing here is allow users to reset their machines. Click next. We're going to set up a specific pattern here, which is going to be ESXi-X dash bracket n fixed equals 2 bracket dash mkt. What the heck did that just do? Okay, here's what it did. And if you ever forget, you can look right over here. In a previous step, remember we just put like sales, and that was it. And it would just enumerate from there, sales 1, 2, 3, whatever. What this is telling us is here's our kind of the formula we're going to use. ESXi-X dash, and then it's going to be a number, and then we're going to do dash marketing. And this number right here, what's happening in the curly braces here, if you read over here, is that n is going to be a number that's going to it'll enumerate, it'll keep going up. And what'll happen is if you just put n, it will it'll just be it'll start with a single digit, so it'll go 1, 2, 3, 4. When it gets to 9, then it'll go to 10, 11, 12. Obviously, it makes sense, right? This fixed attribute, what that does for us is that when it starts off, it won't start at 1, it'll start at 0, 1. So if I have fixed equals 2, it'll start at 0, 1, 0, 2, 0, 3, 0, 4. Then it goes to 0, 9, then it goes to 1, 0 for 10, right? Then 11, 12, 13, so forth. If I have 99 machines, that's fine. If I have 100 machines or more, anywhere from 100 to 999, I might want to go fixed equals 3. So then it will be the very first machine will be 001, 002, 003, and so forth. And if you ever forget, it's listed right here. Okay, we're going to do maximum number of machines is 2, and we're going to provision on demand, and we're going to have 1 available. Okay, so like I said before, I would cheat here because again, that's going to take you 20 minutes for the first time you connect, and then 20 minutes for the second time you connect to build out that second machine. To make this lab go faster, I'm going to go with provision all up front. Remember, provision on demand means that it will create a new machine, assuming that you're still under your max number here. It'll create a new machine once somebody connects. But because we don't want to sit here and wait another 20 minutes for it to provision, I'm going to go ahead and just provision them all up front. We'll click next. And according to the documentation here, we're going to go ahead and go with redirecting persistent disks. Oh, sorry, I'm ahead of myself. We're going to set a persistent disk of 512 megabytes. And we're going to redirect disposable files. We'll give it 1536 megabytes. So the persistent disk, again, is, we're going to change this to E, I think, right? Yes, okay. So what this will do is the persistent disk is for the Windows profile. So you'll see like my documents and things like that will be on this persistent disk. And what that does for us is, since we're doing linked clones, if we should decide to update a virtual machine, we can at least have that set of, that semblance of persistence where our our settings and our documents and everything can stay on this other disk. When you recompose, it'll reattach to that that persistent disk there. Not to be confused with UEM, which is a whole other ballgame. This is just kind of like the entryway or the foray into what persistence can look like, but still have the ability to recompose. Disposable files, we're just redirecting things like the temp files, internet temp files, and things like that. And we'll click next. Over here, we're going to go ahead and put a separate data store for the OS and the persistent disk, and same thing, separate data stores for replica and OS disks. We don't have to do this, and you'll notice if you're paying attention in the lab documentation, you'll see that we end up selecting the same data store. But what's good about this is if I have different data stores and I want to separate those out, maybe I want to keep my replica local, you're allowed to kind of split things apart. so that you can, for performance reasons, which is, I guess, the topic for a different class. But you can spread them out across multiple disks. Okay, parent VM. We click Browse. We're going to choose our VM VW7. That's our parent image or our gold image. And then, of course, all link clones are based upon a snapshot, which was that first step we did. We created that baseline snapshot. Click OK there. What folder do you want to put it in? Well, I think we actually have a folder out there. I think you guys should. Maybe my lab's not set up properly. Yeah, so you should see a sales desktops folder. I guess I didn't create that in the previous lab. So you'd want to select your sales desktop folder. It's not going to make a difference. It's just however you want to organize your world. Host or cluster. We only have one host in this environment. So we're going to choose that host. And the resource pool will be desktops. Again, that was one we created a while ago, right? And now we're going to select our data stores. So the first one is, where do you want to put your OS disk? Meaning your replica. And so we're going to choose, you can only choose one because there's only one replica per pool. One replica, just go with one replica per pool. It's not entirely true. But again, more of an advanced concept, depends on how your infrastructure is configured. Now this warning message is simply just popping up because for high availability, you really should have more than one ESXi host, and we only have one host, so that's what it's telling us, is that, hey, you're having an issue here. Not an issue, but you might want to consider having more redundancy. All right, so this is the persistent disk. We're going to put that on the data store as well, which we could put it somewhere else. Again, same warning message. And now we're going to choose where to put our replicas. Now, the replicas, as I was kind of getting into, they can spread out across multiple disks. And so you notice we could actually select both of these, but there's not enough space on this as the lab environment is configured. So I'm just going to go ahead and click the one there. I'm sorry, I said that just the opposite. You can only choose one, and so that's the one we're going to choose there. Versus what I was sharing with you a little bit ago is the OS disks. To go back here, I could indeed actually select multiple OS disks if I wanted to spread them across multiple data stores, especially if I had multiple hosts with local attached storage. Again, that's a whole nother lecture we don't cover in this class. Okay, so now we are down at step 10J, and it says in the advanced storage options to just accept the defaults. I'm going to go ahead and uncheck the storage accelerator because, as I mentioned before, it's great for saving storage and everything, but it actually kind of slows down the process of a recompose or a building a pool in the first place. And given this is a lab environment, we just want to keep things moving right now. All right, and now we're at the point where I need you to pay close attention. We're going to go in like the lab documentation says. We're going to click on Browse for the 80 container name, and we're going to expand this and choose View Desktops for the container, or the OU. Here's the part you need to pay attention to. The lab does not call this out. I don't believe it calls this out. And I think there's kind of a different, there's something that's not in sync here between the lab documentation and what the lab environment actually is. Lo and behold, right? So we have to check this box right here. Allow reuse of pre-existing computer accounts. You wouldn't normally have to do this. It's something with the way that the Active Directory is configured here. If you don't check this right now, this will fail. It'll try to build the pools, and during the process of building the pools, it will fail, and it'll say that that the desktop already exists. ESXi-X-01 and 02-MKT. Computer account already exists. And so if you've gotten that far and you're watching this video now going, what happened? You can go back in and edit the settings and go under guest customization and check this box, and then you can just go back in and delete those two virtual machines that you've created because they're linked clones. Just delete them from the pool itself, and it'll recreate those. But if you haven't gotten that far, if you're following this in real time, then great, we've saved us a step. Go ahead and check that box right there and click next. And then the very last thing we're going to do is check that box to entitle users after we finish. We'll click finish, so the entitle users wizard pops up eventually. And we'll click add, and we're going to entitle the view users group, again, not view user, but view users, the group. And we'll close that out. And if we go and we look at this pool here, we should see eventually, we'll see. It hasn't quite fired off yet. If you go back and you look at the vCenter server, you'll see that it'll start to do that, build that replica. The very first thing it does, right, is build that replica. There you go. So it's starting its processes. If we go back over here, we should see something happening now. And it's in provisioning state. So now we start our timer in this lab environment. It takes about 20 minutes or so. Notice it's doing them both at the same time because I told it to provision all of them up front. And so now we just kind of wait about 20 minutes. And that's the end of task 3. Task 4 is when you would actually go in and start testing those machines. So after this is all finished, once these say available, you're going to go into CLA and CLB and test, and it'll have you go and look at like your My Documents settings, properties on that, so that you can see that My Documents is actually on that E drive, which, remember, that's our persistent disk that we redirected to. And then you can go in there and make customization settings. They have you change the background to a different color and then log into CLB, and you'll notice that that background change that you made on CLA does not propagate into CLB because they're two separate machines altogether. They're linked clones, they're separate. The gold image is what propagates everything after recompose, but the individual link clones are different machines. Okay. I'm going to leave you right here. There are a few more steps that I just discussed in the lab, but nothing I'm going to record about. So you guys can sit here and you can go to your lab, I guess. When you get to this point, you're just going to sit and wait 20 minutes until that goes to an available state, and then you'll continue on with task 3.